By the 17th century, the Spanish and Portuguese no longer ruled the seas. A new rivalry was emerging, this time between the Dutch and the English. Both wished to grow their wealth, and colonization was of course one of the methods for doing so. In this video, we'll look at two colonies that were caught in the middle of this rivalry, and the interesting story of how they flipped hands. But first, today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. Like other VPNs, Atlas VPN keeps you anonymous when using the internet. But this is more than just a VPN. It blocks all the malicious links, ads, and trackers, and notifies you when someone is trying to steal your data, and you can use it on unlimited devices. And it doesn't slow your internet speed down, allowing you to keep watching your favorite streaming services. But if you're traveling, you may not be able to access your favorite shows, or even the streaming platform themselves. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus all have geo restrictions due to licensing rights. With Atlas VPN, you can bypass geo restrictions and access your favorite content from across the world. You can also save money using this VPN as well. Multiple worldwide services have their pricing adjusted based on different regions. With the information provided by cookies and IP addresses, these services can guess where you're located. Once you switch your location to India, for example, you'll see a huge drop in many services' prices. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. It means you can get a 3-year subscription for just $183 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. This is the best VPN deal on the market, but time is running out. So get your deal by clicking the link in the video description below. One of the places caught in the middle of this rivalry was Suriname. In the 17th century, traders and explorers from both European nations, as well as a few others, visited and set up small trading posts in the area between the Orinoco and Amazon deltas, a region known as the Wild Coast. In 1630, the British began taking the colonization of the area seriously. Initially, it was a financial failure, but efforts continued. In 1650, the governor of Barbados, at his own cost, furnished out a vessel to settle a colony in Suriname. The settlement consisted of around 30,000 acres near the mouth of the Suriname River. At around the same time, the Dutch were growing a colony in North America. In 1609, an English explorer, Henry Hudson, while searching for the Northwest Passage as an employee of the Dutch East India Company, came across what would become New York Bay and the river that would eventually be named after him. This was not a Northwest Passage, and he returned home disappointed. But Hudson documented the area in detail, and what he saw was appealing to investors. The land was fertile, there were natives that could be traded with, and there was an abundance of beavers, whose furs could be sold for making hats, medicines, and perfumes. As a result of his report, the Dutch sent voyages to survey the region, and confirmed what Hudson had reported. Privately owned Dutch companies then began trading in the area. In 1621, the Dutch West India Company was granted a trade monopoly. In 1624, settlers arrived in what was now called New Netherland, and its seat of government was founded at the southern end of Manhattan Island and named New Amsterdam. This area was actually claimed by the English as well, but they had no permanent settlers in the region, and so the claim meant little to the Dutch. Though the English had made an attempt. Just 4 years prior to the Dutch settlers, the Pilgrims attempted to sail to the mouth of the Hudson River from England to settle it themselves. However, storms had driven them more than 220 miles northeast of their intended destination. Instead, their ship, the Mayflower, landed on Cape Cod. The Pilgrims made another attempt to sail south, but for a variety of reasons, primarily a shortage of supplies, they were forced to turn around, and the colonists decided to instead settle near Cape Cod, establishing the Plymouth colony. The English had become frustrated and envious. The Netherlands had become the richest country in Europe. Through their massive trading companies, they essentially controlled the world's seas. And the Netherlands had just settled what the English had failed to. Although the two were once close allies and had fought together against the Spanish, the two were bound to clash. In 1651, the English banned foreign ships from transporting goods from Asia, Africa, or America to England or its colonies. Only ships with an English owner, master, and a majority English crew would be accepted. Breaking this law would result in the confiscation of the ship and its cargo. These rules specifically targeted the Dutch. As one English general put it, "The Dutch have too much trade, and the English are resolved to take it from them." The English started taking ships, and the Dutch started arming themselves. The inevitable happened on May 29, 1652, when Dutch Lieutenant Admiral Martin Tromp refused to salute General at Sea Robert Blake in the English Channel near Dover, even though the English required it. Warning shots were exchanged until there were no longer warnings. The First Anglo-Dutch War had begun. The English technically won the war, but the war had little effect on the commercial rivalry. 10 years after the war had ended, while the two countries were technically at peace, 4 English frigates arrived in New Amsterdam and demanded the colony surrender. The English promised the settlers they could continue their way of life, something that was highly appealing to them. They had lost their loyalty to the Dutch West India Company after repeated requests to the company to provide them with protection, which the company ignored. So the locals chose not to resist, and the colony was taken by the English with no casualties. New Netherland was then reincorporated under English law as New York Province, and New Amsterdam, New York City. The Second Anglo-Dutch War soon followed, and on February 26, 1667, the Dutch took Suriname. A few months later, the war ended, this time the Dutch as the winners. But they didn't demand New Amsterdam's return, and instead just wanted to keep the newly acquired Suriname. This was agreed upon in the Treaty of Breda, essentially trading the two colonies for each other. It may sound a little odd that the Dutch would choose Suriname over New York, but in the 17th century, tropical colonies producing agricultural products that could not be grown in Europe were deemed more valuable than the ones with a climate similar to that of Europe. But the drama wasn't over. The Third Anglo-Dutch War broke out in 1672, and the Dutch came back with an invasion force of some 600 men and quickly retook their old colony. New York City would again be renamed, this time to New Orange. But when the war ended with the Treaty of Westminster, it read, that whatsoever countries, islands, towns, ports, castles, or forts have, or shall be taken on both sides, since the time the late unhappy war broke out, either in Europe or elsewhere, shall be restored to the former lord or proprietor, in the same condition they shall be in when the peace itself shall be proclaimed. Meaning, New Netherland would be given to the English once again, and the Dutch would keep Suriname. They would stay in these countries' possession until the colonies became independent. Suriname, its own country, and New York City and state as part of the United States. The view of the English on the matter can be summed up in an excerpt from a journal belonging to an 18th century Virginia gentleman named William Byrd II. He wrote this in 1728 as he and a party of surveyors drew the border shared by the colonies of Virginia and North Carolina. Another limb lopped off from Virginia was New York, which the Dutch seized very unfairly. The king sent a squadron of his ships of war, under the command of Sir Robert Carr, and reduced that province to his obedience. Some time after, His Majesty was pleased to grant that country to His Royal Highness, the Duke of York, by letters patent, dated March 12, 1664. But to show the modesty of the Dutch to the life, though they had no shadow of right to New York, yet they demanded Suriname, a more valuable country, as an equivalent for it, and our able ministers at the time had the generosity to give it them. It's fun to think about what would have happened if the Dutch had kept New Netherland and New Amsterdam. Would they still be part of the Netherlands today? And would what is now New York City still be such a large and important city to the world economy? Was the English takeover inevitable, with it being squeezed between its other colonies? Or would the independent United States have eventually annexed it? Let me know what you think would have happened in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, check out some of my other videos on New Netherland and Suriname. Shout out to my Patreon and YouTube members, and thank you all for watching. And don't forget, today's sponsor, Atlas VPN, is currently selling a 3-year subscription for just $183 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get your deal by clicking the link in the video description below.